The Apollonian intuitive feeling style in childhood. Even at an early age, the NF child is apt to display a gift for language. He is likely to begin to talk early, and extroverted NFs may seem to their parents to never stop talking. NFs tend also to have a charm which draws people to them. They seem to have a natural talent for relating socially, both to peers and to adults. Although the introverted NF child will have some difficulty communicating, especially outside the home, the NF needs and seeks recognition that he is valued by those around him, and he needs that reassurance each and every day. The NF child can be the one who makes up stories and recounts them with vivid imagery. At times, then, he may be accused of lying, when in fact he is only exercising his imagination. NFs, especially introverted ones, are likely to daydream a lot. The NF is hypersensitive emotionally to rejection and to conflict. If he is reared in a home where the parents quarrel very much, the NF child is apt to become withdrawn and insecure. He needs the assurance that those around him are in harmony, and if he is to develop his own tenuous, He needs the assurance that those around him are in harmony if he is to develop his own tenuous identity. As the NF seeks a sense of self, he engages in often deep identification with characters in stories, especially fairy tales. The princess and the prince are apt to be very real to the NF child, and his daydreams often take him off on royal quests. Often stories of the medieval era, of knights and their ladies, of dragons and grails, appeal to the NF child. Some caution should be exercised in monitoring the reading material of the NF child, who can easily be overstimulated by the vivid imagery he is likely to experience when reading stories of dragons, witches, ogres, slayings, and so on. NF children, as do NT children, usually enjoy being read stories which are beyond their own reading capabilities, but which spark their imaginative powers. And, like NTs, they may want the same story read over and over. They also are apt to enjoy complicated, detailed illustrations, rich with subtle colors. Excuse me. NF children are apt to enjoy people, toys, dolls, or animals to which they can attach a personality, and these treasured toys become very much a part of the NF's life. A lost toy friend is indeed a real tragedy to the NF child. Winnie the Pooh, Piglet, Mr. Toad, Alice in Wonderland, Dorothy and her Oz friends are all real for the NF child to a degree not shared by other types. The NF child is apt to play with all his toys as fantasy objects, just as does the NT, but the NF is more likely to weave stories around them rather than try to understand them. It is interesting to conjecture whether the common, invisible companions which some children have in their childhood is not more characteristic of the NF than the other types. One could certainly predict that the rejection or ridiculing of this imaginary friend by others would crush an NF child who would himself feel rejected. Beautiful this morning. Competition for an NF child does not have the appeal it might have for other styles. The NF child is apt to be almost hypersensitive to another's feelings. He tends to suffer with the loser, even if he is the winner. He feels bad about the loser. Cooperative games and competition against himself are more likely to be something which appeals to and is healthy for an NF child. Although all children are subject to sibling rivalry and to problems of rejection, when a new member is added to a family, this transition needs to be very carefully handled with the NF child, who always is seeking for his sense of self, always looking for his meaning in the world. The NF child is apt to have the same experience as the NT child when he goes to school, in that he may find himself out of step with the other children. Somehow he feels different, and indeed he is in the small minority until he too reaches college. The INF child, in particular, may be painfully shy and hypersensitive to even the slightest gesture or word of rejection from his teacher. NF children are apt to idolize their teachers. They also, however, can hate them with equal fervor if rejected or ridiculed. NF children thrive on an abundance of personalized attention and do not respond to physical punishment. They need the security of well-established routines, but those which permit frequent interaction between adult and other children. Interactions with peers do have impact on the NF child, who can be deeply hurt by apparent cruelties received from them. This type of child, especially the introverted NFs, lacks defenses against behaviors which other types would handle easily. In the classroom, NF children are apt to be most nourished when they are in an interactional arrangement, rather than stationed in desks arranged in rows and columns, all facing forward. All right, I'm going to just read that again because I didn't like how that stumbled out of my mouth. And oddly enough, the sun is coming up on the right of where we're at, but our view is still the best at the moment. Okay, here we go. In the classroom, NF children are apt to be most nourished when they are in an interactional arrangement rather than stationed in desks arranged in rows and columns, all facing forward. NF children need and like to discuss the content of their lessons. They learn and are sensitive to materials in the affective domain, usually respond well to poetic language, and as stated earlier, tend to be talented verbally. They are not impatient with discussions, which to the NT may seem needlessly redundant and wandering. NF children are likely to experience distress if they work with a teacher who uses ridicule or who seems to reject them personally. In fact, the NF is troubled by any rejection of any student and tends to empathize with the hurts and embarrassments of others, at times beyond the discomfort felt by the actual recipient of the rejection. Promises are important to an NF child. If these commitments are not honored, the neglect is felt very deeply and taken very personally. If this happens too often, an NF child may develop physical symptoms, for example, eating problems. Conflict in the home or in school is a source of discomfort. He flourishes in an atmosphere of love and harmony. NF children tend to do well academically, as many have outstanding linguistic fluency. Languages are their forte, and they usually learn to read easily, are good at written and spoken communications, and enjoy the process of communicating. They like to work in small groups and thrive in a democratically run classroom. They tend to conform to adult expectations if they believe that the adult likes them. The NF child is usually pleasant and agreeable and wants to please. He or she needs feedback from others, that they themselves are valued by others. When the NF child tenders a creative product, he gives from the heart. The slightest rejection is apt to devastate him out of proportion to the degree of rejection. The NF child is not really comfortable in large groups, where instruction is not individualized, or in situations when the teacher is too hurried to be sensitive to the needs of this type of student. The NF needs to be loved by his teachers as well as his parents. An NF student usually enjoys social studies as well as languages, since both deal with people in a transactional way. People's attitudes and values, what they prefer, how they respond, what they wish for, what they say, all fascinate the NF child, who sees the world from a personal focus. He likes the world of ideas and values, but always tends to process these ideas with himself as the center. An NF may have difficulty handling anger in himself and in others, and this is particularly true for an introverted NF. He is repelled by ugliness and turns away in disgust. Cognition for the NF child may be impressionistic. He tends to be satisfied with a global, diffuse grasp of learning. If he gains a general impression, glossing over details, he still believes that he has sufficient mastery of the subject. An NT child, by way of contrast, would want to master details in all their precision and is almost compulsive in his over-learning. The NF wants and hungers for a sense of identity, and one of the way he gains this is through personalized acknowledgement. Physical touch, or at least physical closeness, usually transmits a projection of love and warmth to the NF child. The messages they value most are those which say, "I value you. You are important to me." And that is the end of that one. We've made it to page 121. The next little section is learning styles, and then that will finish chapter 4. Thank you for being with me this morning. Lights went off. I appreciate you. We've been reading the book, Please Understand Me, Character and Temperament Types by David Kiersey and Marilyn Bates. And I appreciate you. Flip over here to this other sky before I let you go. See, that's where the actual sun's coming up, but it's not really. See, it wasn't actually that much prettier than what we got here, I don't think. Zoom us in down.